Welcome to the Retirement Wealth Podcast, where we help you navigate the often tricky waters of retirement planning. Today, we're diving into a question that many of you might be asking. How much money do you really need to retire comfortably?
Yeah, it's a big one, Emily. There's no one-size-fits-all answer, but we're here to break it down for you. We'll discuss factors like your lifestyle, healthcare costs, and even how long you might expect to live in retirement.
Exactly. And it's not just about the numbers, right? It's about envisioning the life you want to lead once you retire. We'll also touch on strategies to help you reach those financial goals, and maybe even share some common pitfalls to avoid.
That's crucial because, planning for retirement can feel overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. We want to give you the tools and insights to feel confident about your future.
Right. And we'll wrap things up with some actionable steps you can take today, whether you're just starting to plan or if you're already on your way to retirement.
Sounds good, Emily. Let's get into it and start unpacking what it really takes to secure a comfortable retirement.
Yes, let's do that. So first off, let's talk about those lifestyle choices, how they impact the amount you need to save.
Emily, the conversation about how much money you need to retire comfortably has really taken on a new urgency lately. With so many factors at play, it's important for people to understand just why this matters right now.
Absolutely, David. For many folks, retirement timelines are shifting. They're not just thinking about retiring at 65 anymore. Some are considering working longer, while others are hoping to retire earlier, and that creates a whole new set of financial needs, right?
Exactly. And with the way the economy has been, inflation is a huge concern. Look at the grocery prices or the cost of gas these days. It's not just a passing phase. It's like you have to factor in how much more you might be spending in the future compared to today.
Right. And then there's the market volatility. It's been a roller coaster, hasn't it? One day it feels like everything's up, and the next, it's down. That can really shake someone's confidence, especially if they're nearing retirement or just starting to plan for it.
For sure. I've spoken with clients who've seen their investment portfolios take a hit, and it's really made them rethink their plans. They're worried about whether their savings will last through retirement, and that fear can lead to some tough decisions.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And then there's tax efficiency. So many people overlook how taxes can impact their retirement savings. With potential changes on the horizon, it's crucial to consider how you're going to manage that.
Exactly. You might have a solid nest egg, but if you don't plan for taxes, it can really erode your savings. A good strategy can make a significant difference.
And let's not forget about Social Security. It feels like every year there's new talk about changes, right? Folks are really unsure about when to take it or how much they can depend on it over the long term.
That's a big one. I had a couple recently who planned to rely on Social Security as a big part of their retirement income. But with all the uncertainty, they realized they needed to diversify their income sources. It was eye-opening for them.
Definitely. And then there's healthcare costs. With rising healthcare expenses, it's a huge part of the retirement equation that can't be ignored. Have you seen the estimates for long-term care? It's staggering.
It really is. I often remind my clients that healthcare can be one of the largest expenses in retirement. Planning for that early can really alleviate a lot of stress down the line. One client told me they wish they'd started thinking about it sooner.
That's a great point. And alongside all of these financial considerations is the emotional side. I think people underestimate how much financial security impacts their peace of mind in retirement.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen it firsthand. When someone feels secure in their finances, they're more likely to enjoy their retirement. They can travel, spend more time with family, and really embrace this new chapter of life.
And that's what it's all about, right? Enjoying the fruits of your labor. But with all these factors, it can feel overwhelming for folks trying to plan.
Yes, and that's why it's so important to have a clear picture of what you need. Like, I had a client who thought they could retire comfortably with a certain amount saved, but when we went through their expenses, it became clear they needed to adjust their saving strategy.
Wow, that must have been a wake-up call for them.
It really was. It's crucial to have those real conversations about what retirement looks like for you. Everyone has different dreams and goals, and that affects how much money you'll need.
Exactly. You can't just look at a number and think it applies to everyone. Some people want to travel the world, while others might just want to spend more time at home with family.
Right. And legacy planning comes into play too. Many people want to leave something behind for their loved ones, and that requires careful financial planning. It's about balancing your needs and your desires with what you want to leave behind.
And in the current economic climate, it's more important than ever to reassess your strategies. With so much uncertainty, having a flexible plan can really help you adapt to changing circumstances.
Exactly, Emily. It's all interconnected. The current trends we're seeing demand a proactive approach rather than a reactive one. You don't want to be caught off guard when it's too late.
So true. And, I think a lot of people have this feeling of wanting to take control of their financial future. They want to feel empowered in their decisions.
Absolutely. That sense of empowerment can lead to better choices. It's about being informed and making sure you have a roadmap tailored specifically to your situation.
And that's why this conversation is so important. It's not just about the numbers. It's about understanding what those numbers mean for your life.
Well said. And as we transition into core strategies, let's help our listeners really break down how to tackle these challenges head on, ensuring they're on the right path to a comfortable retirement.
Yes, let's dive into those strategies.
So, Emily, when we talk about how much money you need to retire comfortably, one of the first things that comes to mind is, well, the classic 4% rule.
Right, the 4% rule. It's like a guiding star for a lot of people. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. The idea is that if you withdraw 4% of your retirement savings each year, you can generally expect to have enough to last for 30 years. So, if you have $1 million saved, you'd be looking at withdrawing about $40,000 a year.
That sounds pretty straightforward. But what about inflation? Doesn't that play a role too?
Absolutely. Inflation is a big factor. The 4% rule was based on historical returns, but inflation can erode your purchasing power over time. You might want to adjust your withdrawals to keep pace with inflation, which is why some folks suggest starting at 4% and then increasing it slightly each year.
Got it. So it's not just about the initial amount, but also keeping up with rising costs. What about asset allocation? How does that fit in?
Great question. Asset allocation is crucial. A common rule of thumb is the 70-30 portfolio, 70% in stocks and 30% in bonds. This can provide a balance of growth potential and stability.
And that mix really depends on your risk tolerance, right?
Exactly. If you're more risk-averse, you might lean towards a higher bond allocation. Conversely, if you're comfortable with risk, you could go for a higher percentage of stocks. The idea is to find a balance that aligns with your retirement timeline and financial goals.
Speaking of financial goals, let's talk about tax-advantaged accounts like 401ks and IRAs. How do those play into retirement planning?
Tax-advantaged accounts are game changers. With a 401k, for example, your contributions lower your taxable income, and the money grows tax-deferred. Then there are IRAs, traditional and Roth, each with their own rules and benefits.
I imagine choosing between them can be a bit tricky.
It can be. With a traditional IRA, you get that upfront tax deduction, but you'll pay taxes on withdrawals in retirement. A Roth IRA, on the other hand, is funded with after-tax dollars, but your withdrawals in retirement are tax-free. It really depends on your current tax situation and your expectations for tax rates in the future.
So if someone thinks they might be in a higher tax bracket in retirement, they might lean toward a Roth?
Exactly. And it's also worth noting that there are income limits for contributing to a Roth IRA, so it's something to keep in mind.
That makes sense. Now, what about real estate as part of a retirement strategy?
Real estate can be a fantastic asset in retirement. If you own your home, that's often a significant portion of your net worth. Plus, if you decide to downsize or rent out a property, that can generate income.
And there are tax implications there too, right?
Yes, definitely. You can exclude up to $250,000 of capital gains on the sale of your primary residence if you've lived there for 2 of the last 5 years. That's a nice perk.
That's really helpful. Now let's touch on Social Security. What should people consider when thinking about that?
Timing is crucial with Social Security. The longer you wait to claim, up to age 70, the larger your monthly benefit will be. But everyone's situation is different. Some people need to claim earlier due to financial necessity, while others might strategically wait to maximize their benefits.
So it's really about weighing your current needs against future benefits?
Exactly, and also understanding how Social Security fits into your overall retirement income plan. It's often a foundational piece, but shouldn't be your only source.
That leads nicely into withdrawal strategies. Besides the 4% rule, are there other methods people can consider?
Yes, one alternative is the bucket strategy. This involves dividing your assets into different buckets based on when you'll need the money. For example, you might have a short-term bucket for the first few years of retirement filled with cash or low-risk bonds, and a longer-term bucket invested in stocks for growth.
I love that visual. It seems like a great way to manage risk while ensuring you have access to funds when you need them.
It really helps to alleviate the stress of market fluctuations, especially in those early retirement years.
What about required minimum distributions, or RMDs? How do those come into play?
RMDs kick in at age 72 for traditional IRAs and 401ks. You're required to start withdrawing a certain amount each year, which can impact your overall tax situation, particularly if you're still working or have other income sources.
So planning for RMDs is crucial to avoid unexpected tax liabilities, right?
Exactly. It's wise to strategize withdrawals to minimize the tax hit. Some people even consider converting traditional accounts to Roth IRAs before they hit 72 to manage their tax brackets better.
That's a clever strategy. Now let's talk about diversification. How does that fit into the retirement planning puzzle?
Diversification is key to managing risk. You don't want all your eggs in one basket. A well-diversified portfolio can help protect against market volatility. This means spreading your investments across different asset classes: stocks, bonds, real estate, and maybe even some alternatives like commodities.
That's wise advice, David. I imagine it can take some time to figure out the right mix for your situation.
Definitely. It's an ongoing process, and it's important to regularly review and adjust your portfolio as you age and as market conditions change.
So, all of these strategies and rules of thumb really need to be tailored to each individual situation, huh?
Absolutely. What works for one person may not work for another. That's why having a comprehensive retirement plan and possibly working with a financial advisor can be so beneficial.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot to think about, but I feel more equipped to tackle these retirement strategies now. Before we wrap up, what are some common pitfalls people should watch out for?
Great transition. One common pitfall is underestimating healthcare costs in retirement. Another is failing to adjust for inflation in their plans. And then there's the tendency to be too conservative with investments, especially early in retirement.
Those are all really important points. Let's dive deeper into those pitfalls next.
So, Emily, as we dive into common pitfalls in retirement planning, one of the biggest issues I see is something called sequence of returns risk.
Yeah, I've heard of that. It's when the market takes a downturn early in retirement, right?
Exactly. Imagine you've saved up, let's say, $1 million, and you plan to withdraw, let's say, 4% annually. But if the market drops significantly in the first few years,
it can really eat into that nest egg, can't it?
Yes, it can. I had a client, let's call him John. He retired in 2008, right before the financial crisis. His investments took a big hit, and that made his withdrawals a lot tougher. He was pulling out money when the market was down, which meant he had to sell more shares to meet his needs.
Ouch! That sounds stressful.
It was. He had to reconsider his entire spending plan. So the lesson here is to have a strategy that accounts for market fluctuations. Maybe having a cash reserve or fixed income investments that can tide you over during those downturns.
That makes sense. You want to avoid being forced to sell in a down market. What about taxes? I've heard people don't always factor that in when planning their withdrawals.
Right. Many retirees overlook the tax implications of their withdrawals. I had another client, Sarah, who was in a higher tax bracket than she expected because she was pulling from both her traditional IRA and her Social Security.
That can be a surprise.
Absolutely. Since she didn't account for how her withdrawals would affect her tax situation, she ended up paying significantly more in taxes than planned. The key is to create a withdrawal strategy that minimizes tax liability. maybe considering which accounts to draw from first.
So it's about being strategic about where the money comes from?
Exactly. And, another common mistake is underestimating healthcare costs and longevity. Many folks think Medicare will cover everything, but there are still out-of-pocket expenses.
Right, like premiums and copays, correct?
Yes, and the fact is, people are living longer than ever. I had a couple, let's call them Tom and Linda, who planned for, say, 20 years of retirement, but they didn't factor in that statistically one of them might live into their 90s.
Wow, that's a big oversight.
It is. They hadn't saved enough to cover those extra years. A good rule of thumb is to plan for at least 30 years in retirement, just in case.
And I imagine that can be quite a shock if your retirement savings run out earlier than expected.
It can be devastating. That's why a detailed healthcare plan is essential. Including long-term care insurance can be a lifesaver for some.
Definitely something to think about. What other mistakes do you see often?
Poor asset allocation is another big one. Many retirees get too conservative too quickly. I had a client, let's name him Mark, who moved almost all his investments into bonds as soon as he retired.
But bonds can be low growth, right?
Exactly. He thought he was being safe, but that left him vulnerable to inflation. Over time, his purchasing power diminished significantly. A balanced portfolio that includes equities is crucial, even in retirement.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between safety and growth?
Right. And then there's claiming Social Security too early. I've seen people do this because they're eager for that extra cash flow, but
they might not realize it could hurt their benefits long term.
Exactly. I had a client named Barbara who claimed at 62. She didn't know that by doing so, she reduced her monthly benefits significantly. She could have waited until 70 and received a much higher amount.
That's a tough lesson to learn.
It is. The decision on when to claim Social Security should really be based on individual circumstances, like health, retirement timeline, and financial needs.
How can people spot these red flags early in their planning?
Well, first, create a comprehensive retirement plan that includes projections for income, expenses, and healthcare costs. Regularly revisit that plan to adjust for any changes, and I'd suggest working with a financial advisor to help identify potential pitfalls.
That sounds like sound advice.
Also, educating yourself is key. Attend workshops, read up on retirement strategies, and don't hesitate to ask questions.
Knowledge is power.
Exactly. And if you find yourself making these common mistakes, don't panic. There are ways to recover.
Like what?
For instance, if you're overexposed to bonds, you might consider gradually reallocating some assets back into equities, but carefully. And if you've claimed Social Security early, you can still earn back some lost benefits by delaying future claims, depending on your situation.
So it's about making adjustments, right?
Absolutely. Retirement planning is an ongoing process, not a one-time event. Regular reviews and adjustments can keep you on track.
That's really reassuring, David. It's good to know that even if someone makes a mistake, there are options available.
Definitely. And having a proactive approach can help prevent those mistakes in the first place.
Which leads us perfectly into what we can do next to ensure a smooth retirement.
Right, let's talk about next steps and how to create a solid foundation for retirement planning.
Sounds great.
All right. So let's dive into some immediate steps you can take right now to really get a handle on your retirement planning.
Yeah, I think the first thing to consider is using online retirement calculators. Places like Vanguard, Fidelity, or Schwab have really user-friendly tools that can help you assess how much you need to save. These calculators can give you a pretty good estimate based on your current savings and expected expenses.
Exactly. And they often let you adjust variables like your retirement age, expected Social Security benefits, and future investment growth. It's a great way to see how different factors can impact your overall plan.
And don't forget about Social Security. Checking out ssa.gov is essential too. They have a benefits calculator that can help you figure out what you might expect from Social Security. It's a big part of many people's retirement income.
Right, and understanding that can really help you gauge how much you need to save on your own. Another tool I recommend is tax software. It can help you run projections for your retirement income and see how taxes might affect it.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of projections, running retirement simulations is a habit that can really pay off. If you can, try to review your portfolio at least quarterly.
Yes. Looking at your investments regularly helps you stay on track and make adjustments if needed. You know, it's all about keeping your finger on the pulse of your financial situation.
And if you're not already using a financial planning app, now might be the time to start. There are apps that can help you track your spending, analyze your investments, and even set savings goals.
That's a great point. Apps can make it easier to stay organized and keep your financial goals in sight. Plus, setting up alerts for when you hit certain thresholds can be really motivating.
Totally. And if you're looking for some good reading material, there are a couple of books I think are fantastic. The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey is a good one for those looking to get a grip on their financial habits.
I agree. And The Boglehead's Guide to Retirement Planning is another solid choice. It's packed with practical advice and strategies based on sound investing principles.
And if you prefer podcasts, there are some great options too. Choose FI is really popular and offers a lot of insights into financial independence and retirement strategies.
Yes, and The Retirement Answer Man is another good one. It breaks down complex topics and gives actionable advice in a really digestible way.
So as you start integrating these tools and resources, remember that it's never too late to improve your plan. Even small changes can lead to significant improvements over time.
Exactly. Just taking that first step, like running those projections or checking in on your portfolio, can really set you on the right path.
And once you get into the habit of these practices, it'll feel more natural. You might even find that you enjoy engaging with your financial plan.
Absolutely. And don't hesitate to reach out to a financial advisor if you feel overwhelmed. Sometimes having that professional guidance can really make a difference.
Yes, a personalized approach can help you feel more confident about your decisions. So with these tools in your pocket, you're ready to strengthen your retirement plan. Let's recap what we've covered today.
So as we wrap up today's conversation, let's recap some of the key takeaways from our discussion on how much money you really need to retire comfortably.
Absolutely. First off, understanding your personal expenses is crucial, right? It's not just about the big numbers, but really knowing what you need for your lifestyle.
Exactly. And then there's that 80% rule we talked about. Many people think they'll need less, but it's often more complicated than that.
Right. And don't forget about healthcare costs. They can really add up, especially as we age. Planning for those expenses is a must.
And we also touched on the importance of diversifying your income sources. Relying on just Social Security or one retirement account can be risky.
Yes. Multiple income streams can provide more security and flexibility, which is so important in retirement.
And finally, having a solid withdrawal strategy is key. You don't want to outlive your savings, so figuring out how much to take out each year is essential.
Well said, David. It really is about building and protecting your wealth for the long term. Remember, retirement should be a time of enjoyment, not stress.
Exactly. So for our listeners, if you found value in today's episode, please make sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a comment with your biggest takeaway or any questions you might have.
And don't forget to share this episode with someone you know who's planning for retirement or is already in it. They might find it helpful.
And just a little teaser for next time, we'll be diving into how to create monthly income after retirement without having to go back to work.
That's going to be a great one.
Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you being here.
Yes, thank you. Enjoy your day, and we'll catch you next time.